Hello, everybody. Very, very excited with tonight's tea and chat, and so pleased that so many of you could join us. We've got Roy Ballam joining us tonight to talk about artificial whatever, AI, intelligence, and how we can use it, in the classrooms and for textiles. This is just an intro because he's doing a full sort of course on it in a few weeks' time. So if this sort of sparks your interest, then you really must sign up for Roy's course because it looks really fascinating. And I've started using ChatGPT and using it quite a lot, and it's really, really useful stuff. But you do need some direction on it because I've found myself with all sorts of weird things. I know Nikki's used it as well for designing. So I'm not going to carry on chatting. I'm going to let Roy start. So welcome, Roy.
Yeah, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining me, and it's good to be here. And thank you, Dawn, for the invitation. I'm just going to share my screen first of all, and then we'll get going. Okay, so let's get cracking. So tonight we're looking at AI and its potential use in textiles education. If you've got any questions, you can always put them in the chat and I'll try and answer them at the end. But obviously we'll have a few minutes for any questions that you might want to get answered straight away. And the main thing tonight is just to sit back, to see what's happening and hopefully be inspired. And what I really like you to do is to have a go and think about your own CPD. So although at the moment, I'm sure there's a lot going on and everyone's really looking forward to having a bit of an Easter break, I'm sure in the months and years to come, AI isn't going to go away in education anytime soon. So it's quite good to be at these early stages, even if you're starting to think about what you might have, how you might use it, because you can bet already some of your students are already using it. So let's have a little think about what we're doing. And just interestingly, tonight, all the images that you see on this presentation have all been created with AI. I haven't, although I've got A-level art, I didn't actually draw any of these, and you will just get the see the potential of what you might be able to do. So should you really care? So really thinking about it, I think it's some tools that hopefully will help to complement what you already do. And it's like all tools that a teacher has at their disposal. You pick and choose the best ones to suit you at a particular time. Really, what I can see is there's a potential to use it in different stages. And the first thing is to help with some of your planning, your thinking, ideas for assessment, image generation, and so forth. And I think in a longer term, hopefully it will help up to free up some time, whatever that might mean. But I think what it does enable you to do is to do things much more quickly, so very rapid, and then you can adjust and modify it. Yeah, we all know that starting from a blank page is sometimes very difficult. So actually having something that gives you a first draft, which then you should edit and you should do something with, I think is time saving. And hopefully you'll see the potential and this evening. So that's supporting your planning and teaching. I think as well, it will enhance some pupil learning as we go through and as we discover what it can do and how it can help pupils perhaps investigate and explore different questions that they might have. And when we're using, for example, the chat tonight, you can sort of have a conversation with it. So you can get deeper and deeper and more focused. They're quick, as I mentioned, it's rapid. So you can do some analysis, some structuring, some writing. And we're going to show you how to turn those prompts. So they're the things that you enter into the AI, they're called prompts, into images. And you can do videos and audio and all sorts of things now, but we're going to keep it simple tonight. So I think it really, really helpful to help you or a teacher to help create lessons, think about assessments, come up with different handouts. Perhaps they're differentiated as well. That might be important. You might want to look at externally set assignments and get some thoughts and ideas for that. Obviously, it can help you draft letters, communications. and it can help you ask those what if questions as well. So the main tools are these sort of generative AI, and these are the things that you've probably heard of. So Chat GPT we're going to use tonight because you can get it free. And there are lots of other AI tools out there as well. There's one website called There's an AI for That, and that's quite good. And if you go onto that, you can search the different AI tools that are available. Not all are free, but some do have some trial purposes, and there are some on there for example, fashion and textiles, for example, so fairly focused. But there's lots of capabilities of them, so you can get them to answer questions, you can get them to write tasks, and you can give some very human-like responses from them as you go through. But with all that potential I've given you, there are some watch outs and considerations you need to think about. So you need to think about the quality of the response that you give. So if you ask a fairly general open question, you'll get a fairly general open answer. So you need to be quite focused. You need that context to make sure that when it's looking through its databases and analyzing what you've asked, it's being much more precise. You need to think about bias as well, because this can reflect sometimes in stereotypes. So, for example, on Thursday, I'm doing a presentation on World Home Economics Day, and I asked the image generator to give me an image about home economics, and it was all girls, all cooking, or selling. So these stereotypes are there even if we don't think about them, and they will perpetuate and come through. There's also this issue with accuracy of information. I've read an article about sometimes AI can hallucinate and make things up. So it really does need to be checked. And that's true for us teachers as well as for the pupils. And coming on the pupils, there's this misuse as well, isn't it? So, passing something off that they think, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, as it were. So my real things is don't depend on AI for accuracy of information. They're like an assistant. I think the best thing is they're an enthusiastic intern that wants to do really, really well for you and will rush off and do the job really, really quick, but it may not be very good. So great having that intern. It will help save you some time, but you do need to check it. You need to modify it. You need to make it appropriate for your situation and for the pupils that you teach as well. They really don't provide that level of critical thinking and that creative thinking either. And remember all the time, you are the subject expert, not the AI. So you have the keys to this, okay? So without you, it's pretty much nothing. There's also ethical considerations to think of as well about the bias which I've mentioned and fairness perhaps. And also the UK government has a policy on AI, and it's really trying to accelerate the use of AI in industry and therefore within education as well. There's also guidance available for teachers from the Joint Qualifications Council, particularly about the misuse of AI, which is worth reading. And at the end of this, I've given a list of sort of further reading articles to have a look at. And also teachers' unions as well now are producing some guidelines for teachers around the use or misuse of AI. So you can see here very quickly, ethical concerns, consent on using AI, and about concerns, for example, using it in standardized tasks, for example. So we do need to think about these watch outs and these considerations at the same time. So we're going to get onto a bit of a demonstration tonight. So I've come up with some different textile teaching and learning scenarios, which hopefully will resonate to you. We're going to try and see what is related to textiles teaching. We're going to use two things, both are free, which I'm using deliberately. So the first one, the Chat GPT, it's the most common, it's the biggest, and it's free to get the account version 3.5. And I'm using Bing, which is basically the search engine, which is from Microsoft, and they've got a new image generator from that. I mentioned this AI tool website. There's an AI for that, it's worth checking it out. But we're going to look at 6 areas. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to create some lessons. So we're going to get some lesson outlines, we're going to get some ideas for practical and theory, and then we're going to look at some of the assessment, aims and objectives and so forth. So that's the first one. We're then going to look at some practical assessment frameworks. So thinking about criteria for marking within textiles. And then thirdly, we're going to generate some information. So whether that's data, producing summaries, creating charts, for example. Fourthly, we're going to then get it to help us with some assessment. We're going to get it to help us write some multiple choice questions and some open questions so that pupils have to apply their knowledge and learning in a more in-depth way. We're then going to look about producing differentiated information, which is quite helpful if you're thinking about the different abilities of students that you teach. And that can be through published information on websites, for example. And lastly, I suppose the real fun bit is to look at creating images as well. But I wanted to show kind of a whole range of things. And as I say, I've kept onto 2 tools which are free. And although there are lots of other tools now, fashion design things and all sorts of stuff, you have to pay for those. So I'm trying to look at what we can use for free because I know budgets are tight. So let's have a look. So a few tips before we go. We need to be clear about what you want. Remember I said about that context of what you need to do. So don't be vague. Give as much context as you can. So the who, the what, the how, and any constraints that you might have. And you can continue that prompt. So the first prompt will be like write a lesson. The next thing you might say is, oh, give me some more information on aims and objectives. So you can continue that conversation on the prompt that you put in. So some of these prompts might be in the context of things like state that you're a textiles teacher in the UK and you're teaching 11 to 14-year-olds. So you're giving the AI your role. Give it a task. So I want you to write a lesson about, I want you to create a chart on so-and-so. I've given the next one away. Display that information as a chart, so how you want it presented. You can ask it to take a situation or some information and then plan it step by step. So you've got a task and a chain coming on. And then you can also add some constraints. So only use fabrics that are durable, for example. So there's lots of things here to consider. So let's get on with the demonstration. I'm just going to change my screens. 1 second. Just need Dawn to play some music while I'm doing this, which is always good.
Could sing. Oh no, I won't sing.
You can sing if you wish, Dawn. We may regret it, of course, but
I was going to say, why don't you sing, Dawn?
okay, so we're just going to go to the next screen. So you can see it's definitely live tonight, can't you? So there we go.
Unbeknown to Roy, I have a master's in opera performance.
Yeah, and I don't know if Dawn knows I've got a master's in IT. So there you go. You wouldn't believe it though, would you? So hopefully you can see my screen. So one of the first things we're going to do, we're going to ask it to create some lessons. So I'm going to put this in, and I've got my prompt already written. So not Sweep, because that's the name of my dog. But I'm just going to do that. And then, so what I'm asking it to do, you're a secondary school textiles teacher in the UK, write a series of 10 lessons for pupils aged 11 to 14-year-olds, covering the following 6 areas. So I've kind of made this up about fibers, synthetic, natural, synthetic, blended, woven, and so forth. And I want the chat to give me the aims and objectives of each lesson, including an overview and assessment. So I literally hit go, and then the chat GPT should think about it for a bit and then come up with the answer. So what it's now doing is generating those lessons for me. And then you can see it's very quick. I had a little bit of a stumble there to think about it, but what it's now doing is coming up with some of those lessons for me. And I think that's actually quite helpful because it's coming up with them very, very quick. And, you know, something that I wouldn't be able to do so quickly. What I'll need to do is to go through that and check whether it's actually accurate and what I wanted and so forth. But it's still churning out the answers here for me. What's interesting is that I asked for 10 lessons and it's only given me 6. So it's not always accurate. So that's something you need to bear in mind. What I can then do is do a follow-up prompt to say, suggest practical experiments or items that people to make to reinforce their learning of each lesson and provide that as a chart. So what it will now do is to come up with the lessons and the type of experiments or things that they could make in the other column for me. Again, I'd need to check this and to make sure it was what I could do, but you can see here, I could then continue that prompt going on. Let's do another one that's slightly different. So you're a secondary school teacher, write a 60-minute lesson about textiles and sustainability, include the aims and objectives and so forth. So boom, put that in. So my intern's gone away and come back with my aims and objectives, previous relevant knowledge, a timeline, and the activities broken down into its individual component parts for that lesson. So again, that's pretty quick, which I think is pretty good there. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to then say to it, highlight the key learning about sustainability and textiles use. So it will then come up with a number of points for me to consider. I could then cut and paste these into a PowerPoint presentation, or I could put it into a worksheet, or pupils could use it as further information as we go through. Let's have another think of another type of lesson or whatever we could do. And again, this isn't just lessons, it could be schemes of work and so forth. So I'm the textiles teacher, write a 60-minute lesson about how to use a sewing machine. I remember this myself at school, and list the key learning that how this can be used or transferred in the future, and definitely about health and safety issues. I know in my class, several pupils got their fingers stuck in the needles. So let's have a quick look at this. So here it comes up with, and it's coming up with this lesson for me, which I think is pretty good. And then what I can then do, and it's coming up with all the health and safety issues for me as well. And this is great. And it's an idea of how you can use the AI to quickly generate lesson ideas. You may not agree with it all, but it's giving you a good starter for 10. So, I mean, it does go on and on and on, as you can see here. So even the assessment too. And then I might think, okay, so I'm a trainee teacher, early careers teacher. How do I manage this? And I've put 25 pupils. Some of you might laugh and say, yes, I've got 35, Roy. But how would I think about managing this in a practical situation? What would the advice be? So again, I've asked it for this, and it's coming up with something. Unfortunately, it hasn't got a magic wand and 3 other textiles teachers appearing. But what it is doing is coming up with some suggestions and ideas which are hopefully practical and pragmatic at the same time. Let's carry on. So that's just a quick example about how you could use it for the first one, which is around lesson planning and idea generation for schemes of work and so forth. The next one I want to do is to look at something around assessment, which is an interest of mine. And I'm going to ask it this question. Again, I've given the context of who you are, so your role, and then I want it to create an assessment rubric for designing and making and presenting a clothing garment for a 5-year-old, and then show as a chart. So I've told it how I want it presented. So again, here we go. It's going to come up with this. And what it's doing here, it's coming up with design, fabric selection, construction skills, fit and comfort. I haven't asked it any of this information, and the presentation. And then for each of those different criterion, it's given a scale from 1 to 4, and it's actually given us quite a bit of words to think about that marking. So from excellent, good, fair to needs improvement as well. So I think that's a pretty good start for 30 seconds work. And then I can continue the conversation. So I'm saying, well, that's lovely, but can you use more textiles language in this? So it's going away and it's coming back again now with hopefully a more detailed rubric for assessment using much more textiles vocab within that. So again, hopefully you find that quite helpful and see. I mean, you maybe want all that detail, and you could ask it to summarize it. But you can see there's a very quick way of presenting information. And incidentally, once you've produced this, you can see just underneath it, there's a clipboard. So you can copy that and copy it straight into Word or PowerPoint or whatever you're using. You can get it to regenerate something. So if you think the answer looks a bit strange, it can regenerate an answer for you. And then the last one is you can say, actually, it's a really bad response. And over time, it will learn what the most appropriate response should be. So that's quite, I think, an interesting one on assessment that you can have a look for. The third one, as I mentioned, I want to look at it about how you generate information. So how you gather that data and so forth. So let's have a look at this one. And this might be something that you do, or perhaps in the future, you might get pupils to do. So again, tonight, the role is you're a teacher. I'm interested in the different tensile strengths of fabrics. So I just want a chart to look at this. So let's see what it comes up with. So again, very quickly, we need to check these are correct, of course, but very quickly it's come up with a very simple table of a rating, and it's come up with its characteristics as well. So I think that's good, but what I don't know how to do is how do I test for fabric strength? So I've asked it to come up with this, and here it is. It's coming up with some suggestions of how to do it. I don't think we've got a tensile testing machine, but here's some interesting ways to actually have a look at that. And what I could do is once it's finished coming up with those conclusions, I could say, how could I do this with no professional machinery? So again, it's coming up with something much easier with a ruler, measuring tape, scissors, and so forth. So again, it's about thinking quite creatively about what you want to ask it, and it will then come up with some different things. Let's do another inquiry about some information. So this time, I want it to produce a summary for my pupils that I'm teaching. And I want the sources to inspire the development of ideas and relevant textile design. So from a cultural, social, historical, contemporary, blah, 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 blah. You may notice some of these words because I've been having a look through quite a lot of GCSE kind of work. So again, that's my prompt. So I'm going to see what it comes up with. So it's going to come up with a summary. And again, here's lots of information coming up. And again, I might want this just to help me kickstart creating some slides, some presentations, and so forth. And I may not have time to do all this, but at least this is giving me a step in the right direction. Let's do just another one. And you can see how quick these are. This one is the wrong one, so that's not particularly good, is it? So let's do this one. So this one is, I want it to come up with a chart for me. So that's how I want it presented, giving the pros and cons of 6 textile techniques and processes. And I've named them: weaving, felting, stitching, and so forth. So let's see what that comes up with. So again, very quickly, it's coming up with these. And again, you need to check, but the speed at which it's coming up is fairly incredible. And it's all textiles related, absolutely. So let's look at one more in this creating information. So hopefully you'll like this one. Okay, sorry about this. So I'm a 50-year-old pupil. I know that's, you can't really believe that, can you? studying textiles. I want to design a waterproof jacket. What fabrics could I use? So fairly open, loose question I could go through. And here it's going to come up with some ideas for me. So quite interesting. It's coming up with them not in any particular order, but it's just going through the database or the large language model that it's got and finding out those particular things that might be of interest. I can then say, okay, well, that's all very interesting, but what are the pros and cons of those different fabrics that you've mentioned? And can you display that as a chart for me? You can get a sense I quite like charts. And again, here, I've got that information before, and now it's giving me like a summary, and then looking at those pros and cons of how I might want to use that. So I think, okay, well, that's all very good. But in my mind, I want to make sure it's as lightweight as possible. So that's the information it's provided me. And I want to make the jacket as lightweight as possible. Which fabric should I use? And this is the best and why. And again, here, it's then given me some ideas about how I could do that. And again, it's giving me information very quickly, but is it accurate? Is it precise? That's something that the investigation would have to happen afterwards. And if you read the JQC guidelines, if pupils are using AI, they actually have to reference it and say where they got it, what time and date they got it, and what that information was, and how they've used it and applied it to make it their own. So these are key things that we need to think about. Okay, so that's lots of information. Let's say now, you saw a sneak preview of this a moment ago, because I wasn't very good at cut and paste. How about helping me write some assessments? So I want to do something very quick. I'm going to get it to write 10 multiple choice questions about the sources and origins of fibers for my Key Stage 3 class, and highlight the correct answers. So let's see what it comes up with. So again, very quickly, it's coming up with these. We'd need to double check whether these are correct or not, but it does provide us a very quick way of producing those questions. Remember I said that you could regenerate? So if you wanted 10 more, you could regenerate it, or I could just say to it, write 5 more questions. And it would then produce me 5 more questions. So you can see how you can keep on going on having that conversation with the chat. Let's do another one. So I want 5 open questions and about the durability of fabrics in everyday uses. And I want a little marking guide for it as well, just so I know I can double check. Textiles isn't my specialism, so I want to make sure that when I'm marking it, I'm giving marks to the appropriate points within the answers. So you can see here, it's then given me the question and then a quick marking guide about what you could do. And what you could then do is then ask more questions about a particular scenario and get more detail for the marking going through. So I think that's quite an interesting way to start thinking about AI use, help with assessment as well. What you can also do is you could even ask, if you or pupils have got access to this, you can actually even ask it to ask you questions and then to wait for you to put the answer in. So that's quite an interesting way. Again, we don't know about the accuracy of the questions it's going to ask you. So I probably wouldn't use it with pupils at this moment in time, because I'd be worried about the context and the question and whether they could actually answer it correctly. Another way that we can use AI is to help us produce differentiated information. So what I've done here is I found a web link, and it's about different uses of fabrics and fibers. So different uses of fabrics. And what I've asked it to do is a whole article. And what I've just asked it to do is to summarize it for me, because I don't want to read it. And you can do this for any web page, basically. And I've even tried it with PDFs within a web page as well. So you can see here, it's come up with that one of things. I'm thinking, okay, well, that's okay, but provide more provide more details. So I put that in, and then here, then it's going to again give me a list. So you can see here, it's summarizing this. It gives a really, really punchy one paragraph summary. And now I've asked for a bit more of an overview of that, because it did say there were 28 different fabrics. Whether it will cover all the 28, I don't know. And that's sometimes the slight glitches that you'll find with AI, because it's not always accurate. But you can see here, it's quite interesting as we go through. Now, I think that's great. That's very good. I don't know what some of those are, but it's been quite interesting. But actually, do you know what? I'm doing some of this work, and I'm doing it for my local feeder primary school. So what I want it to do is I want it to rewrite that information for a 5-year-old, because all that's very nice, but it's way too much for me. So can you rewrite that? And here's going to give me a simplified version of that summary of the different types of fabrics. And that's probably better for me, because I don't need all that detail if I'm in there. And I can even go as far as say, well, look, that's really good, but you know what? I want to have a bit of fun. Can you write that as a song for me? And it will then come up with that information as a fun textile song, which I'm sure all your pupils would really thoroughly enjoy. I'm not going to sing it, by the way. That would be way too much. So hopefully you've got a bit of a feel now for using the text-based AI, and the potential is absolutely huge. I'm just going to move on now to some of the visual ways of using it, and hopefully, then if Dawn, you can tell me that you can see the screen now.
Yep, it's there.
Perfect, thank you. So you can see here, I'm just using this one. It's through Bing that comes through. And what I did here, I've done some in advance. I asked it to show that my prompt was show the use of textiles in everyday objects in the home. Often pupils just think about it as clothing and fashion, but textiles is all around us. So it usually comes up with 4. And it's quite interesting when you see these. So here's a few of them. They're just taking a little while to load. It does have problems with words. You'll find that they're all peculiar spellings or not real characters. But as a starter for 10, it's great to get some graphics that you could use, like I have tonight, in presentations, for example. So it's come up here with different uses, and you can imagine you're getting pupils to try and identify what these are and how they were made and what fibers or fabrics are used within them. So that's just one way of doing it. The other one is looking at, for example, looking at being inspired about patterns and repeats and things for maybe fabric design, for example. So these are very beautiful designs that have come through, and from a very, very simple prompt. I then changed that prompt to say I wanted something symmetrical and repetitive, and I wanted it based on a 1980s computer game. And I think, if I'm right in thinking, in the middle of this image that it generated, they even had a little cassette that you might have used with your computer back in the 1980s, or something like that, or a computer. But I thought that was quite fun. But that was really interesting, I thought, the way that it came up with that. I then came up with another one about create a woman's dress inspired by a particular fashion designer. And I wanted it sat in a modern day London. So you can see here, you've got those designs. I didn't check whether that was her style, but that would be something you'd need to do. And this happened really quickly. I'm going to show you some live examples in a moment, but it happened very, very rapidly as you go through. But the detail, again, is quite staggering, as you can see. Let's have another one, another pattern. And this one I wanted based on archaeology. And again, we've got some interesting things coming through here. Another one, another fabric, colorful, just my prompt here, fabric, geometric, colorful, repeated pattern. And my favorite, I particularly like this one. Whether you could repeat it or not, I don't know. But again, it would be very useful just as some inspiration. just to get me thinking about what I could do and really then making it my own. And you can see here, I can share it, I can save it, download it, and so forth. And you can also customize that too. Some other images that I looked at, I just suggested what I want is a fashion range for teenagers based on dinosaurs and sustainability, which are a bit weird. Don't know whether that is a teenager or not. And dinosaurs, did that mean it only produced pictures of boys? So there's that sort of slight bias, or there's stereotype stuff coming through. But again, it was quite fun. And it came up with some designs that I think were quite useful, like for concept boards, for example, but only to take inspiration from, not to say, this is my final design. Let's go through. You can also get it to produce images, and I wanted this one to be about a clothing range for a teenage girl, and this is what it came up with. So rather than producing garments, it actually had the girl doing the work, and some of them are illustrative and some of them are photographic. So again, I thought that was quite an interesting approach. Others here were about another range, because I wasn't very pleased with that one, based on the theme of exploring, and I wanted it with a modern twist. So these are the graphics that it came up with here. I wanted here about smart fabrics. So it's interesting, isn't it, that it came up with activity, there are sensors, there are electronics within this. It's very dynamic going forward. And let's finish this off, and I'm going to ask it another question. And this is one I'm just going to do off the fly, see what happens. But I'm doing a fashion range for teenagers based on dash hounds, because I have one, and summer flowers. So let's try that. Press create, and it's going to create that for me. It doesn't take that long to do. You don't need to go off and make a cup of tea. But what I'm hoping you can see tonight from the presentation is that there's lots of potential for you. There's lots of things that you can do, but it is an enthusiastic intern. I did not expect it to have the dash hound within the clothing, but that's AI for you. So again, there are some really interesting, very quick, you saw how quick that was. So I don't know whether my sausage dog sweep would look so good in those. Maybe in these it would look pretty snazzy. But you can see some of the potential through this. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to hand back to Dawn. So thank you.
That was brilliant. Well done, Roy. Well done, Roy. So there's been
You're
quite
welcome.
a few questions coming up. Let's just see if we can. How
I
is
can
it?
imagine.
Is that easy to find on Bing? I don't quite know.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll what I'll do, Dawn. I'll do like a little summary, and I've got the web links all there for everybody, so you can get them that way. It'd be easier tonight. That's no problem. Yeah, there are lots of different image generators, so it's not just Bing. I'm just using it, because it's easy. But there are lots of others. And even if you Googled AI image generator, you'll come up with them. And at the moment, most of them are free to use.
Yeah. Do they save your searches so you can revisit?
Yeah, so you could see here the image generator. You can see it saved them, because I showed you quickly tonight what they were, and in Chat GPT as well. All your searches are saved to a side, so you can scroll back and look through them. And in fact, I've got the chat also on my phone. So if I'm on the sofa and I'm thinking, I wonder what it thinks about this, I can do it. And then because I have an account which is free, I go onto my computer and it's there, so I can interrogate it further, which I think is really helpful.
Right, what else is everybody saying? What is the best AI to use if producing PP slides, I'm assuming PowerPoint slides, or more visuals instead of Bing, paid or free? Do you know any?
Yeah, there is a PowerPoint generator which something you have to pay for. So what I'll do is in that little links thing, I'll pop it in for you. What it will do, it will also even try and write it for you, which is a bit scary. But what you do, you give it a context, and it will then come up with the words and some images. So I did try it a few months ago on a food example on the Eat Well guide, and it was a disaster, to be honest with you. So it saved me no time whatsoever.
Somebody, Jenny,
Being
is asking,
honest.
is it possible to ask the image generator to create a detailed diagram to show seam lines, how to sew a dart, etc.?
Well, my answer to that is have a go. I haven't done it myself, but you can see how you just need to create an account and then tap it in and find out. I think the key thing is that you have to give it a go. At the moment, there are clearly going to be limitations because somebody in a food context was saying, oh, could you do it to ask for producing photographs of steps of making something? And we tried it and it failed basically. But you just have to give these things a go. And I haven't thought about that one. So that would be quite interesting to see what comes up.
Has anybody else got any questions? I've run out of questions in the chat. Has anybody else got any questions? Otherwise, what are you going to be doing that's different on your course, Roy?
Sure. So I'm just going to try and get those links for you. But the course essentially is a 3-hour structured course, and it's more of a workshop. So where tonight I've just talked at you for far too long, probably. What I'm going to do is basically hold your hand and go through some of these, but actually some additional ones as well, and some different sites, just so that you have that time, which is dedicated to using AI. I know what it's like. We'll say, oh yes, I'm definitely going to use it. I'm all enthusiastic, and then life just comes at you. So actually having that session means you've got dedicated time. You're going through it in a structured, caring, and supportive environment. And there'll be a group of us that will then share what we've learned. So actually, by the end of it, you should take home quite a lot of different examples. But again, it's going to be very hands-on.
Somebody, Jenny T, has come back and says, as educators, should we model referencing in brackets to our students of AI in our lesson prep and presentations?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea. You can see in the presentation tonight, I've referenced all of the AI generated images, for example, because the copyright issue is still not quite out one way or the other on that. So I've just decided to play safe and just say this is where I got it from. I think sometimes you wouldn't need to do it for a lesson in a sense, because it might come up with a first quick draft and then you would edit it to make it your own, wouldn't you? Because you would say, actually, we have 65 minutes. We've only got 2 sewing machines. We've only got this. My pupils are nowhere at this level, or I need to stretch them and push them even further. So you would make it your own, and all you're doing is using like a framework to adapt. So I wouldn't worry in that context. But I think where you're maybe showing them how you can use AI to explore issues or to get more information, like I did about I'm making a lightweight jacket, what should I use? I think that kind of content should be referenced. I think showing the potential, if you want them to use that, I think that would be really good. But definitely, if they're going to use it themselves, they need to start referencing it, definitely.
Right, so anybody else got any questions? Can't see any. So, thank you ever so much, Roy. Absolutely fascinating. And if anybody else does want to more information about this and try this out, Roy's course is, I think, is it the 11th of May? Can't quite remember when it is. I think it's
yeah, I think so. I'll ask Dawn at the teachers of the Textile Skills Centre to let me know.
I'm going to find out. I'm going to go online and find out. Yes,
yeah,
integrating
I'm just
AI
trying to grab
in
it.
textile education. It's the 11th of May. So for more information, go to the website and you will find it. Roy has put up all of
Pop
these
it in the chat box.
links if anybody wants to copy them. Some really useful information there. And yes, if you want to join Roy again, please do. Don't forget we have I can't even, I'm so unprepared tonight. Nikki, can you remember what the next session is? The next textile session, tea and chat.
Oh, the next two in chat. Hold on. It's Nicola's.
Nicola,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, and I've got our one. Nicola's on the 23rd of April, talking about drawing and introducing her next series of drawing.
You got yours before then, I think, actually. You got your chat on
mine's in a different colour in my diary. There's my one, which is all about students' sketchbooks, discussing what should be in them, how they should be, how to create them, etc., etc. All about students' sketchbooks. That's on the 16th of April. Then Nicola's is the 23rd of April, and then Angela Walker is an artist doing something on the 14th of May.
Great, thank you ever so much, everybody, and hope to see you again. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.